Okay.
Good evening, everyone. I hope you've had a good week. God willing, everybody should be well. We should hear good news one from another. The central character in this week's Parsha of Vayetze is our grandfather Lavan. Chazal characterize him as Lavan a Rasha, an evil person. He's also known as Lavan Haramai, a trickster, a cheater, someone who can never be trusted. But the rabbis went farther than that. We read in the Haggadah on Pesach, Tzei Lamad Mabikesh Lavan Arami. Go and see what Lavan wanted to do. Shirotza Lakor Sakol. Lavan wanted to destroy the entire Jewish people. He's worse than Paro. Paro only destroyed the males. He's going to destroy everybody. But that really is an insight that at first glance is not easy to deal with. Paro takes Jewish babies and cements them into the walls, throws them into the Nile for the crocodiles. Lavan didn't do any of that. So why did Chazal characterize him that way? Why did they make him, so to speak, the arch enemy of the Jewish people? He's worse than Esav. He's worse than Paro. Shebikesh Lakor es Hakol. He wanted to uproot the Jewish people. He wanted that his grandchildren should have no roots. They should not know that they had a grandfather Yitzchak and a great-grandfather Avraham. He wanted that they shouldn't know who they are, where they come from. That's the concept of Lakor es Hakol, to uproot. And the famous problem that's always raised, how do you educate children that they should have self-pride, good feeling about themselves? One of the answers, they should know who they are. I always mention in the Torah we read, Emor la Kohanim b'nei Aaron, v'yomarta lahem. Speak to the Kohanim, the sons of Aaron, and tell them. What are you supposed to tell them? You're supposed to tell them they're b'nei Aaron, that they're the children of Aaron, that they're aristocrats, that they're special, that they're holy. That's what you have to tell them. If you tell them that, then all the other laws that apply to the Kohanim can be told and explained, and they will follow them. But if they don't know who they are, and we're well aware how in our time, a vast, vast number of Jews are rootless, have no concept of who they are or how they got here, or what they're supposed to do here. And that's really the tragedy. So that destroys the Jewish people, because then there's no self-interest in being Jewish, because you don't know what it is. You don't know who you are. There was always a great discussion amongst social scientists whether we're the product of genetics or the product of society. In other words, what really shapes us? Our genetic makeup, my mother, my father, my grandmother, my grandfather, That tells me who I am. Well, physically it does. It tells me basically a lot of physical things about me. Or society. I am what I am because this is where I grew up. This is the school I went to. This is the education I received. This is the neighborhood that I live in. This is the milieu. And that is what makes what I am real. That's a long-term debate. Judaism ignores the debate to a great extent because it believes in freedom of choice, freedom of will. Where you grew up is no excuse for who you are. It may help shape you, but you have the choice. You have the choice to be good or bad. You have the choice on every action in life, whether to do it or not to do it. And that's not influenced by genetics either. Person's parents could be wonderful people and they are awful, and vice versa. The Torah purposely tells us that. Terach Avi Avraham, the father of Avraham is Terach. If you say genetics does it, then Avraham doesn't have a chance. And if you say society does it, Avraham doesn't have a chance either. Because he lives in the society of Nimrod and Sdom and wars and conflicts. But Avraham has a choice. He has a choice every moment of his life. And because he chose correctly, so to speak, so that's why he became Avraham Avinu. And therefore the Torah tells us that Yitzchak and Rivka have a son, Esav. If you have genetics, how can you have Esav? He's a tzaddik, she's a tzaddikus. In the house of Rivka, all the miracles that were in the house of Sarah Imenu also existed in the tent of Rivka. Rocha Mitzuya Be'isa, her dough, her bread, there was always a blessing there. Ner Doluk Mer Shabbos Le'er Shabbos. The candle of Shabbos never was extinguished. Tuesday, you already knew it was going to be Shabbos. Onon kosher al oel. There was a spirit, a cloud over the tent of Rivka. You felt it when you walked in. Sometimes when you walk into a home, you have a sensation of the people who live there, even though you didn't meet them yet, and even though you didn't say anything. There's like an atmosphere that permeates it. So Rivka and Yitzchak have an Esav? The answer is yes, because Esav has choices. Esav is not manufactured genetically to behave in one way or another, just as Yaakov is not. So Esav, it says, Vayigdalu Anorim, last week's Parsha, they grew to maturity. Vayi Esav, Ish Yodei Tzayid, Ish Sodeh. That was his choice. That was the profession that he wanted. He wanted to be a hunter. He wanted to be an outdoorsman. Yaakov Ish Tom, and Yaakov chose to be an Ish Tom because we see in this week's Parsha that Yaakov is not a Tom. Yaakov is as shrewd as Lavan. And we'll see in next week's Parsha that physically he is powerful. He wrestles with angels. So we have a picture of Yaakov Avinu Ish Tom, is Nebuch, a thin yeshiva bacher with thick glasses and, pale, small. That's not Yaakov Avinu. The Torah tells us in this week's Parsha, he rolls the stone off the mouth of the well all by himself. It took all the shepherds together to do it, and he does it by himself. He chose to be an Ishtom. Yoshev Oholim. He chose to sit in the tent of study. So people are the products of what they choose to do. That is what the Rambam emphasizes this over and over again in the Shmona Prokim and in the Sefer Amado. The Rambam doesn't ever depart from that principle. And therefore, that's why everybody is responsible for what they do, for good or for better, for reward or not. And therefore, Yaakov encounters Lavan. On the outside, Lavan is a great guy. He gives Yaakov shelter. He gives him room and board. He gives him a job. He gives him his daughters, 4 of his daughters. So on the surface, Lavan is the most beneficent person that Yaakov Avinu ever could meet. So then what does it mean, Bikesh Lak or Sakol, that he wanted to destroy Yaakov? The answer to that is, as I posed, that he wanted to show that, there are no roots here, right? Yaakov has no one to rely upon. There's no past, there's no future. You don't need a present, and the present, okay, we'll negotiate it. So Lavan cheats him. He cheats him every day of the week. It says, Vayachalov es maskurti ze aseres monim. 10 times he changed the deal. If you look in the history of tyrants in the world, you always see that they can never be trusted because they never keep their word, no matter what they say. Basically, they are almost incapable of keeping their word. There are people to whom their word is their bond. I knew businessmen, very, very wealthy and successful, who once they made a commitment, even though the commitment may at the end turn out to be negative to their interests, they didn't go back on it. And I know also from my years when I was a lawyer that there are people that even when you have a written contract, signed, sealed, and delivered, you don't have anything. Because that also is the power of choice. So Yaakov encounters Lavan. So Lavan looks like a tzaddik. Lavan wears a big tallis. But Lavan is as corrupt as they can be. And in that corruption, he intends to destroy Yaakov as well. Because what he wants to do is corrupt Yaakov. That Yaakov should think that Lavan is the way of the world. That you can't make it in this world being Yaakov. I remember my brother, one of my brothers-in-law of blessed memory, taught in a yeshiva in New York. And he taught in the Beis Medrash, and one year he taught Choshen Mishpat. He taught the laws of business that are implied and described in the Shulchan Aruch. And towards the end of the semester, when they were summing up what they had learned, one of the young men, the students, asked him innocently, "But what if you're in business?" Like, all of this is very good in the Beis Medrash, all very good theoretically, but what if you're in business? Like, how can you be in business and not, And the truth is that it's hard. It's difficult. But that's the challenge. So Yaakov Avinu has to see through Lavan. He has to realize what Lavan wants to do. And that's the meeting that he has with his wives. And he says, I know what's going to happen here. I know Lavan's going to try and steal everything. Steal everything doesn't mean money. He's going to steal my future. He's going to steal my children. He's going to make them Lavan's grandchildren instead of Yitzchak's grandchildren. And that's a mortal danger. And that's what it means, Bikesh Lakoris Hakol. He wanted to uproot everything. Forget Yitzchak, it's a battling, forget it. He can't do it, forget. Yaakov can't do it, he's an Ishtam. Well, you got to be a man of the world, you got to be Lavan. And we see that at the end of the Parsha, when Yaakov flees from Lavan and wants to return to the land of Israel, and Lavan pursues him. Why does Lavan pursue him? Because Lavan, that's Lakoris Hakol, he wants to destroy him by corruption. And Lavan says an interesting thing. He had a vision the night before that Kaviochel, the Rabbonu Shalom, appeared to him. And the Rabbonu Shalom tells him, be careful. Don't say anything to Yaakov, mitov v'adra. Don't tell him good things. Don't tell him bad things. Don't touch him. Let him go. When Lavan repeats the conversation to Yaakov, it's very interesting what he says. He says, Yesh la'el yodi, I have the power to destroy you. Except that the Lord doesn't seem to want it, so I'm not going to do it. But he's convinced that he has the power to do it, even though the God told him you don't. And that's what implied in the three words, Yesh la'el yodi. I have the power in my hands to do it, all right? What can I do? The God of your fathers appeared to me and said I should be a nice guy. Okay, so I'll let you go. But I love it. There's got all sorts of complaints. You went and you didn't let me say goodbye to my daughters and you didn't let me kiss my grandchildren. He is Mr. Innocent. And that's the real confrontation that Yaakov faces. Yaakov can face Esav much more directly because Esav does not pretend to be his buddy. Esav comes with 400 men to take revenge. But Lavan is the nice Zayde. What are you talking about? And that is what Chazal warned us about. And throughout the long history of the Jewish people, it has always been the internal enemies that have attempted to destroy us. They've been the most dangerous, even though the external enemies have taken a tremendous toll amongst us, but not equal to the toll that the internal enemies have taken. It's shattering. There's a Pew report that just came out on American Jewry. 81% of American Jewry don't believe in anything. Can you believe that? Yes. It says 19% feel that religion is important. 19%. The holy people stood on Har Sinai. Thousands of years of devotion to Torah. 19% say, yeah, religion is important. 81% say it's not important. Doesn't play any role in my life. And then 46%, I mean, you got to see this Pew study. 46% said that humor is more important than faith. The Jewish trait to have humor, that's more important to be Jewish than to have faith. So that's Lavan. That's Lacharis Hakol. Lavan also believes in humor. And Lavan is humoring God. He said, God appeared to me, told me not to bother you. Yeshel Yodi. I could if I wanted to, okay, but I'm not going to do it. And that has been the story of the Jewish people throughout the ages. I mean, the losses of the Jewish people in the last 80 years to assimilation and intermarriage, Rahman al-Islam, are far greater than the losses in the Holocaust. So in the Holocaust, we know who did it. But who did this? Lavan did this, not Esav. And Lavan is more lethal to us than Esav ever will be. And that's Bikesh Lacharis Hakol. He wanted to uproot everything. He wanted to destroy us completely. Kachol HaGoyim Beis Yisrael. He'll be just like everybody else. And if we're just like everybody else, then we're nobody. So this confrontation between Lavan and Yaakov, which is the end of the Parsha, is only the summation of the entire 20 years in the house of Lavan. That daily contest between the two. Lavan is subverting him every moment. And Yaakov is attempting to hold on, to remain Yaakov. And that's why in next week's Parsha, we'll see that his name is changed. Because it's not enough. Yaakov alone can't resist. It has to be Israel. You have to have a greater name, a greater vision. You have to see yourself in a different light. And that really is the main message of this week's Parsha, is to recognize Lavan. And Lavan looks like us. And to a certain extent, there's a piece of Lavan within each and every one of us. But we have to struggle against it. Because if Lavan wins, we are destroyed. We will survive Esav and we will survive Yishmael. All of Jewish history, with all of its pains, has shown us that we will survive that. But how will we survive Lavan? How will we survive all the ersatz Judaism that exists? All of the fake ideas, all of the new things that are going to revitalize us that only destroy us. And how do we survive people that say, I have in my power to destroy you, but I'm going to be a nice guy. I'm going to let you live. Do we see the danger that lies squarely in front of us? So I think that this is a very important parsha because it illustrates for us the struggle of the ages. It's not just what happened with Yaakov. And that's why the Haggadah says, Shebechol dor v'dor omnim aleinu l'chaloseinu. Every generation there's Lavan. Every circumstance there's Lavan. Smooth talking, nice looking, great ideas, college degrees. And he's out to destroy you. And in that realization, we can find comfort that just as Yaakov overcame Lavan, we will also overcome the Lavans that we face and that our society faces. And we'll be privileged, like Yaakov was, to return whole in body and spirit to the land of Israel and to resume our mission of being a Mamlechas Kohanim v'Goy Kadosh. So I want to thank you all for listening and to wish you a Shabbat Shalom. And please stay well. And Saturday night we have a lecture. And then next Thursday again, a Parsha Shiur. Yemir Hashem, stay well, Kol Tuv Selo.